What if the woman wiping down forgotten tables knew more about the company's future than the man whose name sat on the building? She wasn't on the board. She wasn't even on the radar. But when she laid eyes on one buried page in a foreign contract, everything changed. She didn't walk into a meeting. She walked into a storm. No one inside Brightwell Industries paid attention to who swept the offices, until the woman they overlooked almost saved the company they were about to lose. It was the kind of morning that cut through gloves. Wind sharp, streets choked in gray slush. Clare Dawson hurried past shuttered storefronts, coat flapping, socks soaked. The local bus had broken down again. Her second late shift this month. One more incident, and she knew what would happen. Linda, the director's assistant, clipboard in hand, no second chances, was waiting. And Claire had no backup plan. Not with the overdue notices. Not with her mother unable to stand, let alone speak without pain. She turned the corner, boots splashing into a puddle that looked like it hadn't moved in days. Ahead stood the crumbling fence of Brightwell, an old electronics plant clinging to life in a town that had already begun letting go. The logo on the gate was rusted. The windows held more grime than sunlight. But the smokestack still pushed something into the sky. And that meant the factory wasn't dead. Not yet. At the side booth, Mr. Coleman, security badge, coffee breath, and years of sadness in his shoulders, gave her a tired grin. "They flew in this morning," he said. "Who?" she asked, catching her breath. "Investors, from overseas. Word is, if the deal doesn't land, we don't last past spring." Claire nodded, jaw tight. No one had to explain what that meant for her. Or this town. Inside the cleaner's locker room, the air was heavy with chemicals and resignation. Martha, head of janitorial, spoke with a voice that had grit and heat in equal parts. "Top floor, meeting room, not a single fingerprint, you hear me? They want it spotless." Claire pulled her sleeves up, tied the apron without a word. She took the back stairs, same route she always took when she wanted to avoid the looks. That building had once meant something. Back when she was on scholarship, with 2 majors and 3 professors telling her she was built for law. She'd studied international contracts like they were poetry. Until the phone call came. Her mother's spine. No insurance. Everything cracked in 1 semester. Claire left school, picked up shifts. One day turned into a decade. Now she wiped tables she once imagined herself negotiating over. As she sprayed down a polished surface in the executive suite, a single paper stuck out from a half-closed folder. She paused. Something about it pulled her in. She leaned closer. Header. Vertragsschlussbedingungen. German. Sharp, legal German. Tight spacing. No translations. Her throat tightened. It wasn't the language that startled her. It was what she suspected might be hidden between the lines. And in that moment, on a floor she wasn't supposed to belong on, Clare Dawson realized she might be staring at something that could bring the whole building down. She didn't mean to read it, but her eyes moved before she could stop them. The first few lines unlocked something she hadn't felt in years: clarity, logic, control. The kind of focus her brain used to live in. Clause regarding transfer of executive power upon the discovery of misrepresented financials. An interim leader may be installed, must be fluent in German law and corporate governance. Claire's breath caught. Could this be real? "Look at that," came a voice from behind her. Sharp, arrogant, amused. "Our mop expert found something shiny." She turned, startled. Richard Kane, Brightwell's director, stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes narrowed. But there was something in his face that hadn't been there before. Not anger. Panic. I was just cleaning," Claire said quickly, trying to tuck the pages back. He snatched them from her grasp. "Reading confidential documents now, are we?" Behind him, another man hovered. Michael Grant, head of production. He said nothing, but his gaze was fixed on her. Calculating. Not hostile. Just curious. "You speak German?" Kane asked, voice clipped. "Yes, sir. I studied legal German. Years ago." Kane let out a cold chuckle. "Of course you did. Right before you picked up a mop." He tossed the contract down onto the glass table with a theatrical shrug. Fine. Let's test the janitor. Translate the whole thing. Might be good for a laugh. Tomorrow morning. Then he left. Fast, red-faced, muttering to himself. Claire stayed frozen, hands still clinging to the mop handle like it might hold her up. Michael lingered. He didn't smile, didn't nod. Just looked at her for a long second and said softly, "Take it. You'll need it." Then he was gone too. That night, the cleaning closet turned into a war room. She waited until everyone had clocked out, then dragged a folding chair under a flickering light, a notebook, a red pen, and the part of her mind that hadn't been touched in years. As the building slept, Claire worked. The sentence structure came back first, the technical terms after that. The deeper she read, the more the contract opened like a maze she'd once memorized. By midnight, she was halfway through. That's when she found it. Clause 12. Section 3B. She read it again, and again. If financial irregularities are discovered, the foreign partner may appoint a temporary executive fluent in legal German to oversee operations during transition. Her fingers trembled. Not with fear, with purpose. She looked around the dim storage room, papers spread out beside her boots. The smell of floor polish still hung in the air. Could she be the one they'd need? Or had she already painted a target on her back? Claire didn't sleep. By 3 a.m. she was sitting at her chipped kitchen table, red ink bleeding across the pages she'd translated. Her mother's soft breathing and the hiss of the oxygen machine were the only sounds in the apartment. This wasn't a guess. The clause was real. If those investors uncovered fraud, and they would, Kane could be removed, and someone who could read every word of the transition document would be needed. Someone like her. But she was just the janitor, right? By morning, Claire walked into Brightwell's break room with the translated pages folded deep into her bag. No one looked her way. As usual, no one noticed her. They never did. But as Claire passed Michael Grant in the corridor, he gave her a single nod. Barely a gesture, but it said everything. He hadn't forgotten. And more importantly, he was paying attention. Upstairs, the executive wing buzzed with nerves. The entire floor had shifted. Polished glass gleamed, fresh flowers filled the air with an artificial calm. And even Linda, the director's sharp-eyed assistant, had traded her usual gum and eye rolls for a blazer 2 sizes too small and a stiff smile. The delegation from Schulze GmbH was hours away. Claire was wiping down the boardroom table when the voice cracked through the silence like a whip. "Miss Dawson, do you have my translation?" Kane, already red-faced, appeared in the doorway. His tone made her pulse jump. She turned, folder in hand. "Yes, sir." He yanked it from her grasp and began flipping through the pages with impatient fingers. Line after line, his expression shifted. The further he read, the more his color drained. Then, without warning, he smacked the folder onto the glass table, the sound sharp and final. "What game are you playing?" he snapped. "I did what you asked," Claire replied, voice even. "I translated the document." "Clause 12, he growled. "Why did you highlight it?" "It's the only clause that can kill the agreement if the auditors get suspicious," she said, standing her ground. "If they compare numbers and find inconsistencies, they'll act on it. That's what it says." His laugh was sharp, empty. "Let me guess. You think they will?" "I think that's why they're coming." Silence. Kane narrowed his eyes, then shook his head. "You really believe this is some kind of corporate movie, don't you? That you're going to save the day with your mop and your dictionary?" His voice rose, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was fear dressed as mockery. "You're nobody, Dawson. You've never balanced a budget, never faced payroll collapse. You want to help this company? Keep cleaning." He turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Claire stood still. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from fury. By late afternoon, the snow had returned, gentle flakes swirling against the tall windows. She walked to the office of Susan Whitmore, head of accounting. Susan opened the door, confused. "Can I help you?" "I think you can," Claire said quietly. "It's about the contract, and the numbers being sent overseas." Susan stared at her, surprised, but not dismissive. After a moment, she stepped aside. Inside, Claire spoke carefully. The older woman remained guarded, until Claire placed both versions of the clause on the desk. English, German, exact, precise. Something softened in Susan's expression, like an old part of her had just woken up. She slid open a drawer, pulled out a thin folder, pushed it toward Claire. This is the real financial report. What Kane's showing them. It's fiction. If Schultze compares the two, they'll pull out, maybe worse. Claire looked down at the numbers, then back at Susan. Then we show them the truth. Susan shook her head. This isn't about truth. It's about fallout. People could lose everything. I already did, Claire said, voice firm. I'm not staying silent this time. That night, Claire sat alone in the public library, her contract translation open, the real books beside it. No one knew she was there. No cameras. No lawyers. Just truth, a pen, and a woman who'd once been invisible. Not anymore. She needed a quiet place, one with working Wi-Fi, and no eyes. At a corner table in the town's aging public library, Claire sat beneath flickering fluorescent lights and wrote the most important letter of her life. She addressed it in German, clean and formal, to Herr Heinrich Steinmann, the head of the Schultze delegation. She didn't make accusations. She didn't ask for sympathy. She laid out the numbers, the inconsistencies, and the danger buried in Clause 12. She attached the full translation, photos of the original contract, and side-by-side images of Susan's ledgers, the real ones. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Sending this could unravel everything, or it could rebuild what was already crumbling. She pressed send. Then she waited. For 3 days, the air inside Brightwell thickened. Kane moved through the halls with forced confidence, barking orders louder, walking taller. But Claire could feel it. Something in the walls had shifted. She kept mopping floors like nothing had changed. But it had, and not just for her. On the 4th morning, a crackle over the loudspeaker broke the routine. All department heads to the main hall immediately for a company-wide announcement. Even Linda, always composed, sounded rattled. The space filled fast. Workers pressed along the walls, the air buzzing with confusion. Claire stayed close to the back. That's when she saw them. 3 men in pressed suits stepped onto the floor, eyes sharp, expressions unreadable. In the center stood a man she recognized from a photo, Heinrich Steinmann. Calm. Director. His gaze scanned the room like he'd already made decisions. Kane took the podium, performing for control. Today marks a bold step for Brightwell Electronics, he declared, arms wide, smile stiff. A new future, forged with our global partners. Then Steinmann raised a hand. Before we continue, he said in clipped, confident English, we would like clarification on your submitted production reports. They appear overly optimistic. Kane hesitated. Just for a beat. I assure you, Steinmann interrupted, polite but firm. We've requested full access to your accounting records. We've also examined this contract, including Clause 12, in multiple certified translations. Kane's face drained. At the back, Claire felt her breath catch. The moment had arrived, the one she feared and needed. We intend to conduct an internal review, Steinmann continued. Depending on the outcome, we may exercise our right to recommend transitional oversight. Kane's composure cracked. He turned to Steinmann. Who gave you that translation? He barked. The German didn't answer, but Michael Grant, standing at Steinmann's side, tilted his head. Just slightly. Not at Steinmann, not at the room. At the back. At her. Claire stood frozen. No one else moved. She wasn't invisible now. Kane followed the glance, and when his eyes landed on Claire, something in him splintered. You? He said, voice rising. You think you can take me down? You think a janitor has the right to expose me? She said nothing. She didn't have to. Steinmann stepped forward. We are not here for titles, Mr. Kane, he said. We are here for the truth. The room exploded. Gasps, murmurs, a ripple of applause. Security stepped in. Kane shouted all the way out the door, his voice crumbling into silence. Claire didn't move, just watched. Later, as the day bled into dusk, Steinman requested a private meeting in the same boardroom Claire had once polished. This time, she sat across from him. "You understood the risk," he said quietly. And Claire nodded. "You knew what this might cost," Steinman said, his voice calm but firm. "And still, you spoke." "I couldn't stay quiet," Claire replied. "Too many people count on this place." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We're bringing in transitional oversight," he said, "and we'll need someone to assist, someone who understands the contracts, the language, and more importantly, the truth." Claire blinked. "Are you offering me a position?" "I'm asking," he said. "Will you take it?" She caught her reflection in the glass wall behind him. She didn't see a janitor anymore. She saw a woman who stepped forward when no one else did. "Yes," she said. She walked out of that boardroom not just with a title, but with a different weight in her chest. She wasn't finished. She was just beginning. A week later, Claire stepped into a room she'd once cleaned. Now it was hers. It wasn't glamorous. Just a small desk, a creaky chair, and a dusty filing shelf. But it meant something. From this room, she reviewed contracts, translated real-time meetings, clarified legal terms to international staff, and rebuilt a company that once treated her like a smudge on the window. But progress wasn't a smooth incline. It was slow, wounded, messy. As Brightwell's internal audit unfolded, the cracks deepened. Buried invoices, phantom assets, equipment that existed only on spreadsheets, not in warehouses. It was worse than anyone expected. Kane was officially removed. A full investigation launched. Vendors reviewed. Partner lists slashed in half. The company hovered on the edge of collapse, not from a single blow, but from years of quiet decay finally exposed. Claire showed up every day anyway, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, notepad in hand, filled with legal and linguistic notes in both languages. Michael Grant stood beside her in every boardroom, in every storm. When other voices cast doubt on her, his stayed steady. He didn't speak for her. He didn't need to. He believed in her, and let everyone else feel it. One night, after another long day in a line of endless ones, Claire left her office and found him waiting by the elevator, 2 coffees in hand. "You look like you haven't blinked in 3 days," he said, offering her one with a crooked smile. She laughed. A small laugh, but the first in a while. It felt like breathing again. They walked through the factory floor. New shipments moved across freshly marked lanes. The old machinery hummed. Not loud, but alive. Michael looked ahead. "Ever regret it? Sending that email?" Claire paused. She watched 2 new hires in safety vests, lifting sealed crates with care. Her voice was clear. "Not even for a second." "This place is finally becoming what it should have always been," she added. "Transparent. Ethical. Human." 3 months later, it happened. Brightwell signed its first post-audit contract with a Berlin-based tech firm. The numbers were modest. The balance sheets clean, no smoke, no mirrors. But when the board saw the reports, they clapped, not loudly, but meaningfully. Raises returned, bonuses reinstated, safety programs expanded. They weren't chasing empires anymore. They were building something real. Real coffee returned to the break room. So did something even rarer: pride. Susan Whitmore, the longtime accountant who once concealed the truth out of fear, retired that spring. On her last day, she knocked on Claire's office door with a small bakery box and a tear in each eye. "You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever," she said, voice breaking. "My integrity." Claire didn't speak. She simply stood and embraced her. But not everyone celebrated the change. Old loyalties ran deep. Whispers lingered. Delays in approvals, missing invoices. A slow, quiet resistance from the shadows Kane had left behind. Claire felt it. But she didn't bend. The real test came weeks later. A shipment of vital components, equipment Brightwell couldn't operate without. was stalled at customs. The paperwork didn't match. That wasn't an accident. Clare could feel the fingerprints. Sabotage. Someone had pulled strings. Someone who still had reach. Kane might have been removed, but not erased. Working with Michael, Clare placed a call, not public, not loud, to a quiet ally in the Department of Commerce. They didn't plead. They laid out the facts. 72 hours later, the shipment cleared. The machines started up again. And when they did, the entire floor gathered in the break room. There was no speech, just clapping. Software sincere, not for status. For the storm she never walked away from. That May, Clare brought someone important to the factory. Margaret, her mother. She moved slowly now, one hand resting gently on Clare's arm. But she walked. The surgery, paid for by Clare's new salary and a restored bonus program, had worked. Inside the factory, workers greeted her with quiet respect. They knew who she was. On the executive floor, Clare led her to the office where years ago, she'd stood outside trembling while Richard Kane mocked her education. Now, her mother sat by the window, sipping tea and watching forklifts move with precision. "You know," Margaret said softly, "you're not just rebuilding a business." Clare turned toward her. "You're showing people how to believe in the right things again." Clare smiled, eyes full. "That the truth matters," her mother added. "That people matter." Summer came, and with it, an anniversary. 1 year since a woman with no title sent a letter that changed everything. There were no banners, no cameras, just a quiet gathering. People who'd lived the fallout. People who'd helped rebuild. Steinmann returned, smiling more this time. "Your projections are ahead of target," he said over dinner. "Brightwell has become a success we didn't anticipate, but one we're proud of." Clare thanked him, but she didn't feel pride. Not yet. Pride, she believed, came later, when stability wasn't rare, when workers didn't hold their breath with every quarter, when women like her weren't seen as exceptions, but essentials. One Friday, as she headed out for the weekend, Clare passed a new janitor in the hallway. Young, quiet, eyes uncertain. Their gazes met. Clare smiled, offered a gentle nod. "Welcome to Brightwell," she said. The girl blinked, surprised. "Thank you, ma'am." Clare stepped into the sunlight, keys in hand, heart steady. No confetti, no fairy tale ending, just real life. Hard-earned. And hers. "Now let me ask you something. What did this story stir inside you? Do you believe that courage, especially the kind no one expects, can actually rewrite everything? If you felt something watching Clare's journey, comment 100 below. And tell us where in the world you're watching from. Someone out there might need the hope you just found.